bring us greetings as well. But welcome. We are happy this morning to welcome our 4th and 5th grade students, along with friends and family members. What a talented, thoughtful, and inspiring group of students you are. The Oratorical contest, sponsored by Optimist International, is 91 years old this year, running since 1928. My dad is 90, and so the Optimist contest is even older than he is. This is an opportunity that they try to provide each year for young people to gain experience in public speaking. I'm proud to share with all of you, and some of you have heard this several years, but Barrow has a long tradition of hosting an annual contest each year. Every year we have so many students who participate. We have the largest contest that I know of in the Athens area and surrounding counties, and that's been true for several years. We've also had several Barrow students advance from Barrow to the club level, to the zone level, to the district regional level, and to the district or state finals of the Oratorical contest. We've had 4th and 5th graders make it to state finals, where they were one of just 5 or 6 other students. And in fact, we had a Barrow buddy who competed in finals as a 4th grader who won the state championship as a 7th grader. Every student who participates today in this contest at Barrow is a winner, in our opinion. Each year it's encouraging to me, to our team, to Dr. Sabatini, when we reflect on the state of our youth. Our students bring unique, creative, thoughtful, and important messages. They're willing to share these with each other and the adults who take time to listen. I'm happy with the supportive and kind way that they work with each other in practice. To quote from Mary McLeod Bethune, a great African American who was the 15th of 17 children of former slaves, who went on herself to be one of our most influential women of the 20th century as an educator, civil rights activist, and social visionary, quote, "We have a powerful potential in our youth. We must have the courage," that's the adults, "we must have the courage to change old ideas and practices so that we may direct their power towards good ends." So thank you to parents, family members, mentors, and friends who have come to support these students and to listen. We thank you so much. I'm going to do a brief review of the rules. Students have 4 to 5 minutes to speak on this year's official Optimist Oratorical Contest topic. Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? And finally, the wonderful Optimist organization has recognized gender neutrality. So our Barrow Elementary students, if they advance to the next level at the UGA Law School, will compete equally with boys and girls through 12th grade, as long as they're under 18 by October 1st, 2019. So our 4th and 5th graders, regardless of gender, will go on to participate on a level playing field with middle and high school students. Please make sure at this time to silence all cell phones. Please refrain from taking photographs until after each grade level has finished. And we are streaming the speakers, so you'll be able to share and enjoy all the speeches, watch them again, and share them with family members. Please note that just like the Optimist Club runs their contest, no one may enter or leave the room while a student is speaking. However, there'll be a minute or so between each speaker, so people may enter or depart with the assistance of our doorkeepers. And for the most difficult rule of all, every year we ask that you hold all applause after the speech. And we will hold all applause until the entire grade level has finished their speaking. And then together we'll show our appreciation for all of the talented orators of each grade. This contest is very big. It takes many people working together each year. So first, thanks to the entire Spectrum teaching team: Allison Griffith, Aziz Coleman, Natalie Hicks, Heather Carlson, and Fonda Slongo, who help in many ways as timekeepers, doorkeepers, especially in working directly with our students as they write, edit, and practice their speeches. Ms. Carlson has worked with and supported our 4th graders. Ms. Longo and I work with our 5th graders. We thank Mr. Plumins, who's upstairs with another grade level today, for setting up the sound. Thanks to our 5th grader, Eli Clark, for arranging the video streaming of our contest this year. And as always, we appreciate our administrative team who support our contest year after year and allow this to happen at our school, and especially to Dr. Sabatini. I'm going to introduce our principal, Dr. Sabatini, to bring some words of welcome. And then before we begin our first speech, I'll introduce our distinguished panel of judges.
Thank you, Ms. Mullins, for leading us in this day. And students and family, I just want to welcome you to our oratorical contest for today. I want to say that I'm very proud that you have the courage to participate in this competition. I think it's a challenging competition, but I think it's really important because when you can speak eloquently and confidently about something that is important to you, that will take you really far in life. It will take you far in your classes, in middle school and high school and college. It'll take you far with friends, with family, and in the community. So it's really important to fine-tune your public speaking skills. It's used in lots of different situations. And again, it can take you very far in life if you're good at that task. So I am very proud of you for participating in this. I know that y'all are going to do a great job today. I want you to take some deep breaths and know that everybody around you is rooting for you and cheering for you and hoping that you do your very, very best, and that we're proud of you just for being here. So we hope that you have an enjoyable moments today, speaking about things that are important to you. Family, friends, thank you for being here to support your students. And I just am really proud of you. I hope y'all do a great job. I'll be in and out and watching you on video in between my different meetings I have today. And thanks to our teachers, judges.
Thank you. And of course, we couldn't do this without our panel of judges. And so I'd like to introduce them to you now. And if they'll just wave when I say their name. Sarah Cross. Ms. Cross is a Barrow buddy who taught at Barrow for many years. She was Spectrum team leader and an extraordinary math teacher. Ms. Cross is the proud mother of 3 children and proud grandmother to 2 granddaughters who are all former, current, or soon-to-be students of Clark County Public Schools. She retired to spend time caring for and teaching her grandchildren until they were of school age, and recently returned to Barrow and our school system as a substitute teacher. Now, Ms. Cross is very humble, but one very special award she has received was being honored in 2012 by the Clark Central High School valedictorian and star student as CCSD star teacher. And I can tell all of you here today that it's very unusual for an elementary school teacher to be selected by a high school senior as star teacher. But that award is given by the student to the one single teacher who made the most significant contribution to their development through all their years of school. Ms. Cross wants all of the students here this morning to know that out of all the wonderful events associated with Barrow, the oratorical contest is perhaps her very favorite because of the opportunity it provides our young students to share their important, often profound, and always stirring thoughts with the broader audience. She always leaves this contest feeling touched and uplifted. Please welcome Ms. Cross back to Barrow today. Angela Gay. Ms. Gay is a native Athenian whose accomplishments are far too many to list here. In her professional life, Ms. Gay is a social worker. We first met many years ago when she served Hillsman Middle School as our school social worker. She was never too busy to come when needed to help a student. She is a Clark County School District social worker and also is one of our 2 Foothills Charter High School social workers. Working with young people is an important commitment for her. She has served as the Boys and Girls Club after school and summer camp coordinator and as the YWCO Girls Club Camp as Assistant Summer Camp Director. An important part of Ms. Gay's life is service, giving back to her community all the time. In her busy life, service is just part of who she is. Some of her volunteer work includes being an advisory board member for the Boys and Girls Club, the Girl Scouts, and Healthy Families and First Steps organization, and she's a member of the Athens alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Public Service Sorority Incorporated. Also, Ms. Gay is one of the recipients of the UGA Fulfilling the MLK Dream Service Award at the UGA Freedom Breakfast. This very important award recognizes individuals in the University of Georgia and Athens-Clarke County communities who have worked to make Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream of equality and justice a reality. She was also awarded a 2018 Foundation of Excellence in Education Award. Her hobbies include attending Lady Bulldog basketball games, baking, reading, visiting historical museums, and bowling. I'm pleased to introduce Angela Gay. Sam Preston. Mr. Preston is a distinguished educator who has worked as a classroom teacher and school administrator in schools with students of all ages. For several years now, he has worked for the Clarke County School District as part of the Student Support Services team. His main job is to help students learn how to keep themselves out of trouble. He absolutely loves elementary students and the people who care and teach them. His many awards include Clarke County's prestigious 4-star award for exemplary service to the district. A fun fact about Mr. Preston is that his most interesting hobby is scuba diving, but something that you may not know about him, and I do, is that he has a heart as big as the state of Texas. He constantly helps people without bragging or advertising it. He gives freely of his time, his money, and his heart to pretty much anyone who seems like they might need it. I happen to know that he's befriended one of my Foothill students with a warm meal when he was hungry, a coat when he was cold, and support and encouragement regularly. And that student is doing great right now and just moving through, about to graduate. Please welcome my friend and former assistant principal, Mr. Preston. So we've got a great panel of judges. We have a great group of students to speak today, and we're going to start with our 4th grade speakers. We're going to ask you all to be quiet and respectful as one another speak. We'll take a brief break between our 4th and 5th grade speakers, and we will have this mic here, which you can adjust up or down, and if by chance you want to have the mic clipped on so that you can walk more freely, just let us know, and Ms. Griffith or one of the other teachers will assist you with that. And we'll be going in alphabetical order. I will call students from the back, and we'll get started in just a moment with our first 4th grade speaker.
Maybe when you're not speaking.
So yeah, and since we're streaming this, and friends and relatives can watch. Okay, I'll try that. Camilla.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? I'm giving you my opinion, and this is it. I believe that there is a fine line between optimism and reality. It's up to you to live in it. Imagine this. You adopt a dog or any pet, you know it's going to end with us having to say goodbye. And it's sad and heartbreaking, but we so do it. The love and good times are so worth it. Pretend that you're cooking rice and beans. There's both reality in the recipe and optimism in how your liver will turn out tasty and delicious. Saying, okay, I know to have this, I know to have that. When you're finished, it's going to be awesome. Just wait and see. Some people see a glass half empty, while others see a glass half full. I see a full glass of water right in front of me. I choose to see the endless possibilities that could be. But I know the reality is that I have to put in the hard work first to set myself up for success. There are no setbacks, just learning and growing pains. Like when you accidentally get a cut on your skin. You bleed and are sore. But the scar tissue that grows back is even stronger and tougher. That's how I choose to see things. What doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me in my optimistic thoughts. I hope it was contagious and that it will prove to make you an optimistic realist. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can give thumbs up.
And before each speaker starts, maybe just say good morning or testing, and we'll make sure that the mic is right where it needs to be for your particular height, and speak, as loudly into the mic. If you see us all holding our ears, maybe you're a little loud. Sophia.
Good morning. Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? This is from my wonderful teacher, Miss Kim. She has helped me through hard times and educated me nonstop. You're the best, Miss Kim. Some people think there's not a fine line between optimism and reality. Some people think there's too much to change that for you. Optimism can take you so far. It can change who you are. Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Some people think it's enough that I can live and how it goes. Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? I think it depends on the person's personality. How do you see things? Today I'm going to be telling you how, although there is a fine line between the two, optimism can have an effect on your reality because it shapes what you think it ultimately do. According to dictionary.com, reality is a state of quality of having existence or substance. Optimism, on the other hand, is having confidence and belief in what you can or can't do. Now, optimistic people have confidence in themselves and do everything they can to achieve their dreams and goals. Optimistic people shape their reality for the better, just like Amelia Earhart and Charles Lindbergh. Now, the world is also filled with pessimistic people, which put themselves down in unnecessary situations. For example, let's say you lost your soccer tournament against one of the. Wait, sorry. Sorry, that's so wrong. Now let me tell you, these people were not dismayed because they were great pilots, but how they are remembered for shaping their realities into something better. I can only assume this had to do with their optimistic personalities and how they saw things. For example, Amelia Earhart thought that instead of being a teacher, she would become a pilot and show all of our people that girls can do anything when they set their minds to. So she went back to school for about 2 years learning about how to be a pilot and what she knew, how to fly a plane. She was ready to rock and roll and try anything like girls can do anything. Another example that optimism shows if you start something new with optimism. Just like Charles Lindbergh, he was the first person to fly non-stop over the Atlantic Ocean. Being optimistic, that belief he had in himself, changed his future in some people's opinions. He did have a variety of plane crashes and falling off planes, but that did not stop him from showing the world who he was. Optimism is a big part of what goes on inside. If you believe you can do something, you'll most likely follow your dreams and do the best you can to achieve it. I believe Charles Lindbergh and Amelia Earhart thought that people heard about one person getting what was their name achieving his or her dreams, but others are trying to do their dreams. Now, the world is also filled with pessimistic people, which put themselves down in unnecessary situations. For example, let's say you lost your soccer tournament against one of the best teams in the state. But pessimistic people are going to think it was their fault. Pessimistic people will also think, I'm horrible, it's all my fault. Besides, things never work out for me. Now, optimistic people will think, it's okay, we will strengthen who we are next time. All we need to do is practice harder. From telling you all about these two ways of thinking, I'm going to show you how healing these two thoughts will affect or change your reality. Because of these two opinions, it changes your reality. Optimistic people try harder and try to practice at least 2 hours a day. By training harder, there is a bigger chance that at that next tournament, the reality is a team winning and getting a trophy. However, this may not be reality for pessimistic people. Pessimistic people will more than likely give up, and that will change the reality from them sitting on the sidelines and leaving their team up to no good. There are two different realities going on, one good and one bad, but it all depends on how you think, because how you think will affect what you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Audience, just a reminder, boys and girls, I know it's hard, try to hold your applause at the end of the speech. Remember when you go up to the mic, you first say like good morning, testing, and that way the Miss Griffith and Miss Carlson can come help adjust the mic if it's needed. Kai, do you plan to speak at the mic or flip? Okay, Miss Griffith will assist you with the flip. But you can still say good morning or testing just to make sure we got it right. Kai is our next speaker.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Let's start by asking, what is the difference between optimism and reality? Reality is what is happening at any given time of your life. On the other hand, optimism is what is happening, or is when you say, I can get through these very tough times in my life. Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Yes, but also no. The reason why I say yes is that you can have a lot of optimism and a very good life or reality. The reason why I say no is that you can have a lot of optimism but a very hard life. In that case, there would be a huge gap between optimism and reality. Your answer may change at different times of your life. All may be going well, and then all of a sudden you could lose a family member, a pet, become sick, or injured. This is what happened to me. For the first 7 years of my life, I played baseball, basketball, swimming, golf, and flag football. Life was mostly good. Then, when I was 7 years old, I was diagnosed with leg calf disease. This is basically your hip stops receiving blood and bone dies. I was not able to walk for 18 months, and I had 3 major hip surgeries. One of them, I had a huge cast that forced my legs continuously apart, and I was not able to attend school. Even though my reality was very tough, I knew I could get through it. I had 3 times where my optimism and reality there was a huge gap. First, on my birthday, everybody was running around my house, everybody was jumping around on my trampoline, and I was sitting in my wheelchair watching my friends play. This was one of the times I cried. Second, my brother played baseball at the time, and I would often go to where he played, and I would sometimes go over to where my friends played and watch them play. It was harsh sitting in my wheelchair and watching my friends play the game that is my passion. Finally, after I was diagnosed with Legg-Calvé-Perthes disease, I was not able to attend school because I could not fit through the door. And so my teacher would come to my house to teach me. After the Petri cast was removed, I was able to attend school again in a wheelchair, crutches, and/or walker. However, recess time was still difficult. I was not able to go outside, but I was allowed to invite a friend or two to stay in with me. I really appreciate the people that stayed in with me and pushed my wheelchair. Those are what I call true friends. These times were very difficult, but I knew that I could get through it. After 18 months of optimism and reality being super far apart, my hip had finally healed enough that I could walk and run again. Then I could get back to playing the sports that I love. So, what have I learned from these 2 hard years? Firstly, the reality and optimism changes as you go through life. Secondly, when your reality is difficult, it is important to stick to your dreams, be optimistic, and never, ever, ever give up. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Our next speaker is Donovan. Big voice, Donovan.
My dad was a really loving and kind person. If he was here right now, he would love to see me on stage right now. My dad inspired me to rap. But after the past, I have been really growing up. It is just hard to do everything. I can remember my dad cheering me on at football practice. I wish I could just take him with me all the time at all times. I just want him to be with me right now. I wish the president was with me right now, and I'm here exactly. I know you want me to be strong, Dad. Sometimes I cry and I can't stop crying because it is a really loving thing to do. I am doing really well and I love you. I don't know nothing you to give me. I know what you was doing that mom and dad come by to put some balloons on your grave and we put a lot of flowers and candy of them. I know you see me coming too. Which why did you put I didn't get to see you at the hospital and and when I was young I used to find a microphone and stuff in my closet so I used to use it and I used to start like playing with it and stuff. Then my brother used to play with me and we used to do a lot of fun things. We used to play football and when I used to play for my football team, I used to go to practice and then when he used to be with me, he helps me out and stuff. And he tells me do work hard, and then every time I get stuff wrong, he makes me run. And then when I get upset in football games, he makes me work hard, and then he's done. My mom and dad say put real work into football so that you can do better. And if you do better, then you can do like stuff you want everyone to do. And my dad has made a really good influence in my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Donovan. Okay, we're not quite ready yet.
Yeah, you just want to make sure.
That's good. Our next speaker is James.
Can I start?
Yeah, and right into the mic.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Hi. I think, yes, that there is a fine line between optimism and reality. Firstly, I'm going to talk about what I think a fine line, optimism, pessimism, and reality is. I think a fine line is a big difference between two things, like there's a fine line between cereal and people. I think optimism is thinking of the best thing that could happen, like falling from a high place and thinking, I'll survive and get through this. I think reality is what is happening in real life. Like reality to someone could be nothing good could happen. Now pessimism to me is the opposite of optimism. Think of the worst thing possible. Like if you fell from a high place, you might think there's nothing left for me to do. I will never recover from this. Now, I think there is a fine line between optimism and sorry. Now, I think there is a fine line between optimism and reality, because if you are optimistic, that doesn't mean your optimism is reality. One example of this would be falling off of Mount Everest. If you say to yourself, oh, I'll be fine, that would not be the reality, because if you fall off of Mount Everest, you will die or get seriously injured if you're lucky. That was really just an example that I do not have a first-hand account of. Here's an example that I have experienced. When I was young, I was everything but negative. I was always excited and trying to make new friends, but that didn't stop my reality from being negative. When I was in the first grade, my parents got a long-awaiting divorce. Now I was positive the whole time, but that didn't stop the reality of the situation. That is why I think that there is a fine line between optimism and reality.
Thank you, James. Good job, audience. I know it's hard. I know it's hard, Leah. Good job. Our next speaker will be Devin. Good voice, Devin.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? We need to make poor people happy so they can be happy and get money. The money they can get can buy a home they need to like this, then they need an a in car like so we can help them to get them where they need to go. Like we are happy wife and they be happy. Like they need money, they need food, they need a car like us. I see near communities people that is sad. They can be need money to help them to get a job even if they are sad. They can still be optimistic. That can look for a job. They get money to buy them a home and food and clothes. When I play a game of Fortnite, then they might be more optimistic. Even the time I get knocked down, I go to my friends to help me to revive, get back up, keep going with the game. Me and my friend was flying around the planet. I hit a the default with a pump.
Thank you, Debbie. Our next speaker is Claire.
Good morning.
Big good morning.
Good morning. Here we go. Good morning. Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Yes, I do think there is a fine line between optimism and reality. I really thought this was a difficult topic at first. I realized that the thing that helped me think about differences first is a Venn diagram. So I decided to make a Venn diagram to figure out if there were actually different differences and similarities between optimism and reality. I discovered that there are only a couple differences between the two. Reality is what happens in life, and in reality, things happen in life that you can't change. When you're being optimistic, you might not change things in life because you might think like, oh, if I'm going to be optimistic, I'm just going to do it and accept it however it is. With optimism, you have to think about how you can feel good about yourself and not give up. Optimism is what you want and think you can do about it. There's a time when I should have been optimistic and realized, but I wasn't. It was at a climbing competition to go to nationals, and I got mad at myself because I didn't make it. I was so confident in myself before the actual competition, but when I didn't do it as well as I hoped to, I felt like let myself down. What I mean by this is that I should have been optimistic before, but afterwards I wasn't, even though I should have been. I let all my negative emotions and thoughts take over instead of my positive ones. Even though I was optimistic, reality wasn't what I wanted it to be. However, there was another time when I was optimistic, and I didn't feel like I let myself down. It was also in a climbing competition, and it was the first time I got to regionals. I was 10th out of my age group and had to be in the top 10 to make it to regionals. It was a close call, so that time optimism lifted me up just as I hoped it would. If I wasn't optimistic, I would have not made it. I found a Webster's dictionary I could use to see what optimism and reality really means, and this is what I got. Optimism is the opinion or doctrine that everything is for the best, a tendency to make the most helpful view. Reality was defined as the quality or fact of being real. Some words describing optimism are enthusiasm, faith, happiness, hopeful, and confidence. Some words describing reality are truth, realness, being, actual, and true being. I do think that optimism can be a reality. That is why I think that there is a fine line between optimism and reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Our next speaker will be Barrow.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Well, first, we have to know what is reality. Reality is all around us. Reality is right now. Reality is our friends and family. Reality is what we are feeling right now. Reality is you win or you lose. We still have to know what optimism is. Optimism is when you lose, but you say we'll get it next time. Optimism is just that little dream or hope and you just know it will come true. But what I mean by that is your dream or hope might not always become reality. For example, my sister had an autoimmune disease that caused her permanent kidney failure. I was optimistic that she was going to get better, but then again, there was always a little fear that she might not. Then on October 25th, 2016, my sister got a kidney transplant. Now she lives just like you and I live, except for taking medicine. Now that we know what happened and how I feel, let's talk about how my sister felt. She was optimistic. She was also excited because she was having done dialysis. And she was never very worried or scared. Now let me tell you something different. Let me just say it didn't turn out quite like the last story. One of my dad's friends had cancer for about 6 or 7 years. He was doing great, then all of a sudden his kidneys were failing because of dehydration. And the cancer probably made it worse. He also had to take all kinds of medicines too. Then finally, on January 2nd, 2018, he died. But he did make it to the new year, which I'm happy about. In both cases, I had optimism. But in only one case, my optimism became reality. So my answer to you is sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you, Bo. Our next speaker is Liam.
Good morning. Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? It depends on what's happening right now. Optimism is when you think something positive is going to happen. Reality, on the other hand, is something that's actually happening, no matter if it's positive or negative. For example, let's say you're in a basketball game and you want to make a 3-pointer. You say to yourself, I won't. I think I might make a 3-pointer. But you make a 2. This is optimism and reality working together. Even though they're both different things, if they combine, they become one. Optimism and reality are similar to each other and different. Let's say you're playing a video game and you're about to beat it. You say to yourself, I might beat the video game. And you do. That is reality being the same thing as your optimism. Thus, optimism and reality are very similar. But let's say you don't beat it. They won't be the same sometimes. It's the same thing, but opposite. Don't beat it. Optimism and reality are very similar and very different. And that's all.
Thank you, Liam. Our next speaker is Oliver.
Is fine line between optimism and reality? There is a fine line between optimism and reality. Some people say with optimism you can do anything. That's not true. Of course I would like to be true, but it's not. For example, in soccer, you can't expect to win a game if you're just standing there on the field. You actually have to run a game. You actually have to play the game. But optimism is a big part of it, and a big part of winning the game. But wishing and hoping alone is not enough. We can definitely tell that there is a fine line in golf. Another example to illustrate my point. Let's say you're playing golf and you knew that you were about to hit a great shot. But you just stood there and thought about the shot. You imagine how you're going to hit the good shot. Now, if all you do is look at the ball, well, I doubt very much you have telekinesis or anything. If you know golf, you know Tiger Woods. His dad Earl once said, if you hit a bad shot, you have 10 steps to be mad. Then after that, calm down and hit a good shot. This shows that optimism is a big part of golf, really in any sport. How can you achieve optimism? Well, it's really simple. You just have to think good about yourself and the things that you're doing. You keep this in mind. You can have fun with optimism because you can believe in yourself, and that makes a really big difference in your game. So remember how I talked about Earl Woods in his quote? Well, I've tried it, and it really improves my game. So this entire trend Fortnite is a really fun game, but it requires a lot of optimism. If you play with no optimism, you just get worse. If you lose a game and get all mad about it, and you go into a new game all mad, that'll just make you worse. But if you go in with a positive attitude, you can improve. Fortnite is all about improving. In the game, there is a battle pass, and to get free loot, you do challenges. My dad's still default. He's not too good yet, but he keeps on playing, so he can improve. So let's go from Fortnite songs. My mom just rescued 6 5-week-old puppies, and we just found a home for 5 of them. We have to be optimistic about the homesickness. We try and get them to family and friends. 8 families have came to look at them, but we've only gotten 5 to be taken so far. In reality, you don't know how the dogs are going to do and how they will live in their new homes. So it's good to have optimism. Still, there is always a reality. Very important to stay optimistic, but always know there is a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. Our next speaker is Mary, M.E.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? I know the answer for me, but do other people think the same? I think it depends on the person on whether optimism can change reality for them. Optimism is the type of confidence that people have to encourage themselves. Reality, on the other hand, is the world or the state of things as they actually exist. Now, optimism and reality are different because when you have optimism, you try harder to see things in a good way or try new things because you believe in yourself. Now, optimism and for example, let's say beans is optimism and rice is reality. Now, beans are juicy and mushy, but rice is a bland color and needs to be cooked to taste good. See, you need optimism to make reality good. So put those beans and rice together, and boom, you have a good life. And some people sometimes don't. Optimistic people might think that optimism can change reality, or they might not. It's their choice. Say there is a half-full bottle. Optimistic people would say it's half full, but pessimistic people would say it's half empty. You see, you can look at anything in different ways and it might change reality for you. I've discovered learning about this topic that I am more of a pessimistic person. When someone lets themselves down, it doesn't mean they're always pessimistic. It sometimes means, in my opinion, that the person needs cheering up.
That's what I do sometimes. Since I'm a pessimistic person, as you all know, that doesn't mean I'm down on myself 24/7. I don't feel down every second of the day, and sometimes I don't even show it when I feel sad. I'm also learning to try to not be so hard on myself. Think about getting ready to shoot a basketball. I played basketball for the first time this winter, and I learned to think I can do this. When you believe, then you're more likely to make the basket. But even if you don't make it, you can keep your reality from getting you down. Now, think about what would happen if you got the opposite. I'm horrible at this. Then you might not make the basket. Or even if you do, you might just think you got lucky since you decided you were good at basketball. I didn't make every basket or even a ton of baskets, but I learned to not blame myself and to just keep working hard. I know sometimes I will still get down on myself, but I'm going to try to add some beans to my rice when life gets me down. I hope you do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Our next speaker is Jack.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? I believe it really depends on the situation. One example I have for you is, well, I don't really like speaking in front of people because I don't know what people will think of my speech or whatever I'm sharing with my audience. So I was talking about the oratorical contest at dinner with my family, and I said I'm optimistic that I won't have to be in the oratorical contest because I don't know what people will think of my speech. And my parents said that the reality is that you are doing the oratorical contest. To me, optimism means that you are confident or hopeful something will happen, something good will happen. To me, reality means what really happened or is happening. There are times when reality makes your optimism become true, or the opposite may happen. For example, when I was jumping on my trampoline, I was optimistic that we would have a great time, but the reality was that I sprained my ankle. I couldn't jump on my trampoline for a long time because of that. Another example is at school on a test. You're optimistic that you would do good on the test because you studied really hard. You have done everything you could have done to perfect on the test, and then after you're done with the test, the reality was that you did really well on the test. Another example is that when my family and I were whitewater rafting, I thought we would have a good time, but the reality was that my mom fell out of a ducky, a little inflatable boat, and the rocks scraped almost everywhere, and she was really hurt. When your optimism becomes reality, you would definitely feel happy. For example, when I was metal detecting with my dad and my brothers, we were near an old abandoned railway, and all we found was nails and scraps of metal, and then out of nowhere, we found an old spoon. For me, finding the spoon was like winning the lottery. I was so happy. The spoon turned out to be over 100 years old. When your optimism does become reality, you would feel sad. The truth is that people are not always happy. Even if you are an optimist, you won't always be happy. On the other hand, people won't always be sad either. Oh, is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Yes, there is, and it depends on the situation. Overall, you should always have optimism when something happens, and it doesn't matter what reality will do. Always have optimism. Remember, in the end, reality goes better with optimism. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Our next speaker is Sam.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Yes. Let's start off by saying what optimism means to me. It's different for different people. Optimism is the sort of thought of hope, the thought of I will, or I can, or they can. The boundaries, the mind. Sure, you might think you can throw 3 strikes in a row, but the chances are, if you're a 10-year-old like me, you can't. Or bowl a perfect game, but unless you're the best bowler ever, you can't. That's where reality comes in. I like to say, optimism is dreams where you can do anything you want. Reality says no. You can't do a triple backflip on lands in your hands. That's not real. Let's face it, reality is not very good right now. Poverty, racism, death, wars, disease, conflict, so on. All not very good. Optimism is poverty will go away, the same as racism. We'll stop fighting, and the cure for all diseases will happen. But optimism is almost fictional, not real, illusional. It's what we want, not what we have. So I think reality depends on what you're going through. Imagine your friend got a broken arm or sprained wrist or whatever and couldn't do any of the stuff that he could normally do. Or on the other hand, me. I've never gone to the hospital or never really had a problem with my health. So reality would be different for him and me. A couple of days ago, I was thinking about what my mom told me. She held up a glass of water, half filled with water, and she said, "What is this glass?" I'll flavor it's half empty. There's a theory about that glass that if you say it's half empty, you're more pessimistic than optimistic. But if you say it's half full, then you're more optimistic than pessimistic. That's because full is better than empty when it comes to drinking water. It's just a theory, though. Optimism is a way to think, a positive way, that is. Science states that being more optimistic means more happiness, which means a longer life. By the way, I have inspirational quotes on my flashcards. The pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees every opportunity in every difficulty. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And boys and girls, we'll take a break in just a few minutes. You're doing great. Our next speaker is Charlotte.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? I think yes, there is a fine line between optimism and reality. Some people think that there isn't, but today I'm going to try to change that.
some people, optimism can affect their reality, just like Dr. King's. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a fine line. So Dr. King had a dream. His dream not only affected his reality, but everyone else's reality too. So you may be thinking what Dr. King's dream was. His dream was for African Americans to have equal rights. And by having optimism and never giving up, he changed the world. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a fine line because optimism is hopefulness and confidence about the future or the successful outcome of something. Now, reality is the world and state of things as they actually exist. Now, as you can see, these two things are different. But let's get a closer look on the two. Think of a computer and tablet. It may have the same games, but the texture is different and the quality is different. See, they can be similar in tiny ways, but there can still be many differences. Now, as you can see, we're just born to this topic, and after I find the words, here's a special quote. There is a fine line between dreams and reality. It's up to you to draw it. Now, there's my opinions. I hope I can maybe change your mind if they need to be changed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Charlotte. If we could please have all of our fourth graders stand at the front together so that we can properly acknowledge your wonderful speeches. And ladies and gentlemen, we present our fourth grade orators of Barrow School. We're going to get a couple pictures. And this is a great time to get pictures of our fourth grade. Thank you, and we appreciate again our family and friends, the wonderful students, fourth grade. Everything you had to say was really remarkable. I found myself in the back just nodding my head and making a lot of mental notes, but we really enjoyed all of your comments. Very thoughtful, some of them very personal, some of them very philosophical. Great job. We are going to be proceeding with our fifth grade speakers in just a moment. And I need to make one correction. I inadvertently was thinking of Sarah Clark, our wonderful teacher's son, Eli Clark, but actually our technical support extraordinaire, our fifth grade guru of the streaming video, VTV master, Eli Cook.
Thank you.
So it's 10 o'clock. It's time for us to get started again with our fifth grade speakers. And again, just a reminder for our students, I know it's hard, but if you will try to stay still, no wiggling, papers under your seats, we appreciate it. And again, as hard as it is, hold your applause. Our first fifth grade speaker is Larius. Get that mic right where you want. Say good morning or something so we can make sure.
Good morning, everybody. Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Yes, reality means that something or someone is real. You can feel pain, or even feel love. Sometimes to me, reality is another way to help, but in a common bad or helpful way. Reality means to express yourself in a unique way, to see, breathe, smell, and more. Optimism is a way to help life be less complicated in its own way. Like reality, it has its own way to make life better. But back to optimism, which to me is to make mad, mean, ungrateful, and jealous something that turns to happy, nice, grateful, and generous. Next, it it is not always a time for reality, but sometimes for optimism. Try a little optimism sometimes. Optimism is someone, something, or even a feeling of confidence that helps a situation get better in the happier way that it can. People from history who inspired me in their hearts are Langston Hughes, Thurgood Marshall, Oliver Brown, Robert F. Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., and Rosa Parks. Langston Hughes inspired me with his optimism in his poetry, and many people, including Dr. Martin Luther King, who wrote about his dream in his I Am a Dream speech. On that day, August 28, 1963, in the March on Washington, he put his speech aside and spoke from his heart. Dr. King was one of the leaders of the Montgomery boycott. And Langston Hughes wrote, "Hold fast to your dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field covered with snow. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams die, life is a broken wing bird that cannot fly." He was saying that we have to hold onto our hopes, our dreams, and faith. Don't be pessimistic. Hope is strong. Is a very strong thing. Stay with it, never lose it. Oliver Brown was a man that spoke up for the civil rights for education for his daughter Linda Brown and many others. African Americans should be in the same school as I don't know the part. Same school as white. For it shall be equal education for all. Oliver Brown fought against the Board of Education by having faith, hope, and anger. That was a good anger that upset him, but helped him do what was right, and that carries on throughout history. The line between optimism and reality is common, but also not so common at times. Optimism might be an event in life that helps make situations get better. For example, constructive is something that is being broken down bit by bit like a landslide. But if you know that constructive means to help build up like construction workers build skyscrapers for the sky, then you know that it's for a good reason, like in New York, the Empire State Building. And optimism can help people deal with both the good and the bad problems. Having a sense of optimism or hope or positivity can help you deal with problems. It's a feeling inside your heart. Anyway, having optimism helps. It helps build you up. Sometimes like construction. It happens slowly over time, but sooner or later it pays off. You've moved from being in pieces, broken up in bits, to being whole and strong. Optimism helps as a bad situation to make a better situation emerge stronger out of itself. Do not be pessimistic in your approach to life, to feelings, to problems, because you just don't know what it might lead to in life. I'm just saying, trying to be optimistic throughout life, because you never know how strong it can make you, how far it can take you, and maybe just maybe I might just maybe I might be the next inspiration one day to another child. Maybe you might be the next person to use with optimism as reality. Together we can change the world.
Thank you, Larry.
Bye.
Our next speaker is Lucia.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Imagine if all of a sudden America is in a war. Everyone's homes are being destroyed. There is violence on the streets. There are soldiers and bombs at night. Your home is no longer safe and you know you have to leave. What would you be thinking as you escape the raging war and try to go somewhere else? I would feel scared. I would hope that I could find a new home where I wouldn't fear for my life. I would be sad that I couldn't live here anymore. I would miss my friends and my family. Many refugees have been in this exact situation. Every immigrant who crosses a border carries with them optimism and a sense of reality. Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Yes. Reality pushes you forward, and optimism gives you the hope for a better future. Some of you may know Albert Einstein as one of the greatest minds in the world, and some of you may know him as the guy with the lab coat and crazy hair. Some of you might not know that he is also an immigrant. He was a refugee from Nazi Germany. He was optimistic that if he moved to America, he would have a better life, and knew that the reality was, if he stayed in Germany, he might get killed. Many immigrants experience a similar mindset push and pull. Reality pushing you out of your country, and optimism pulling you into a different one. Albert Einstein once said, there are only two ways to live your life. One is as though everything is a miracle. The other is as though nothing is a miracle. I think Albert Einstein lived as though everything is a miracle because of another thing he said. I would rather be an optimist and a fool than a pessimist and right. Albert Einstein is one of the many examples of immigrants who crossed the border carrying with them optimism and reality. Another one of those immigrants was my mom. She was about my age when she immigrated to America. Her family was getting bombed at night in a war. Her mother, my grandmother, had fought in the revolution against the king. She had optimism. She sold everything she had. She went out on the streets to protest. She wrote articles against the corrupt king. She wanted Iran to have a democratic government and believed that it would. She thought that if enough people would fight, it would change. So she fought. But sometimes your hopes don't come true. The new government came along, and they were not big fans of free speech. So my grandmother ended up in one of Iran's most brutal prisons. She lived in extremely harsh conditions, but was optimistic that she could get her way out. As well as putting many bruises and scratches on her, the prison gave her a sense of reality in the situation. As she sat there on the cold, hard prison floor, she got realistic and came to the realization that Iran was not the place to live. Luckily, she found a way out of prison so they could begin the process of immigration to America. She crossed the border from optimism to reality to cross the real border from Iran to America. I bet some of you here came from immigrants who walked the fine line from optimism to reality. Any person who makes change, immigrants, leaders, even kids like us, they're optimistic that they can do it and know that the reality is it's going to be really hard. I think there is a fine line between optimism and reality. Reality pushes you forward, and optimism gives you the hope to stay in the fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashida. Our next speaker is Copeland.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Well, of course, we all try to have a good outlook on our world, but sometimes things don't go as planned. There are some people who are very optimistic, but some have negative visions on our world. I believe the fine line between optimism and reality means even the most optimistic people still have problems in reality and still have to face reality just like everyone else. For instance, I consider myself a very optimistic person. I see the good in most people and the bright side of most things. But reality is the real world, and it can sometimes not be so bright. In fact, about a month ago, my cousin's dog got sick. We were told he may die. I tried to be optimistic that the medicine would help him, but reality won. As you can see, reality can be very powerful, but doesn't always have to win. Some might always take the opportunity to be optimistic, but some may not. For example, an opportunity I took to be optimistic was when I was trying out for team gymnastics. I could have given up and gone home, or stayed optimistic and took the chance to try. I chose to try. I ended up making it into team gymnastics, all because I stayed optimistic and did not let the reality of maybe not making the team get to me. Some people might think being optimistic is hard, and they should just let reality get them down. But really, they're making that decision to let reality get to them.
They're choosing not to take the chance and be optimistic. You always just have to try it. Even if you fail it, at least you tried it. Optimistic is a very strong word to describe American leaders back in the day, such as Martin Luther King Jr. He got many threat letters saying if he didn't stop what he was doing, they would hurt or worse try to kill him. Do you think he stopped standing up for what was right? No. He stayed optimistic and brought the optimism to the reality. He never stopped doing what was right. Another American leader was Thurgood Marshall. He kept his head up after being denied from the University of Law because he was African American. He stayed optimistic and applied at Harvard University of Law. He became a lawyer and he helped solve the case, Brown versus Board of Education. As you can see, he stayed optimistic and applied to a different college to become a lawyer. Those two people are people we should strive to become. Those two people are people I consider very optimistic. Optimism to me means looking on the bright side when you are in the dark side. Two people that I think represent that really well are my two grandmothers. They have always taught me to look at the bright side when things get hard in reality. My two wonderful grandmothers have always been there for me when reality got hard. But whenever I'm with them, I somehow feel like the most optimistic person in the world. My mother is one of my biggest inspirations. When I grow up, I want to be just like her, a caring, optimistic person. She always faces reality like a brave hero. When things get hard for her or me, she knows exactly what to say to make the reality problems go away. I believe optimism brings power and peace to our world. If we all work together, optimism could be more powerful than reality. We all have people to love and say everything will be okay. But sometimes things don't end up okay. They sometimes don't end up good. People that say things will be okay are just trying to stay optimistic through that time. Most of the time, I believe things do end up okay because of the positive, optimistic minds thinking together that everything will be fine. For example, I believe optimism can calm you down if there's something in reality that you fear at that moment. In addition, I used to have storm anxiety. Whenever a storm hit my house, I would start to worry about my safety and get so scared. My mom would always be there to say everything was going to be fine. So I trusted her and thought more optimistic about my fear of storms. In the end, I was okay. I think being optimistic does calm you down. You just have to trust it. When things go wrong in reality, optimism can overcome those problems. For example, I injured my foot in gymnastics. The doctor said I may have to miss my gymnastics season. I remained positive and I thought that was the worst news in the world. I remained positive and within 5 or 6 days, I was walking with a boot and I was able to start going back to my gymnastics practices. In reality, I only had to miss one of my meets. When you get emotional about events in your life that are bittersweet, I still think you should try to think optimistic about those events that come in reality. I have experienced an event like that in my life. For example, in first grade, my friend named Rachel had to move back to her home country. I was very sad about her having to move, but also happy and excited for her to reunite with her family and friends. I looked on the bright side so that I would not be so sad about her trip back home. I still knew we would be friends even if we were not able to see each other, and we still are today. Optimism is good in many ways. We can help our world become more optimistic by being optimistic ourselves, and always give to others with encouraging words. So as you see, I feel that there is a fine line between optimism and reality. I see optimism as a positive way to face reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Copeland. Our next speaker is Evan.
Testing. Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? I believe that reality is what you choose it to be. I mean, this morning I had a half full glass of orange juice with my breakfast. I could have said half empty, but really, that's not how I see things. I'm just excited to get a drink and a bite to eat that someone made for me, so you won't hear me complaining. To me, optimism is trying to be responsible for your own happiness. Sure, life happens, but optimists like me have a smile on their face, and you wait and find a way to make it work out. Then you have the realists, who tend to see things as they are. They expect good and bad things to happen and see other people as complex individuals who make good and bad choices. which can become obstacles or can help you move ahead. So just to recap, 1, I'm a thirst-quenched optimist who likes drinking orange juice and smiling. 2, I know there are some thirsty realists out there who might need some more convincing. So let me give you a reality check. As a realist, you might try to keep emotions out of the picture and mostly stick to the fact. But that's good and all, but us optimists tend to use those emotions to our advantage. Sure, you are going to have challenges, but that is what makes life so interesting and different each day. It's all about the attitude and if you're willing to take a leap of faith. It reminds me of this one time my friends and I were exploring the train tracks in town. It led to this old rickety bridge over a river. I kept saying, let's go across it. It's been fine for all this time, right? My realist buddy was like, wait, let's check the supports just in case. And then my pessimist bro was like, was the last to cross because he was expecting the bridge to collapse and end us all. We all crossed the bridge eventually, but it took a lot of coaxing for those 2 cautious kiddos. And of course, I have had some difficulties in life too. But I have found a way to put a positive spin on it. 2 years ago, my parents divorced. As my siblings and I struggled with this change, I thought to myself, it'll be fine in the long run. I will say, but I know that my parents love me and they're there for me even if they are not together. And as the saying goes, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But that doesn't apply all the time. My strong forward-looking emotions got me through. Also, a little birdie told me that I do get a little distracted and I might have a problem with turning my work on time. But that's not my fault. When I get home from school, I'm bombarded by my family, friends, toys, books, and the silly little doggy that greets me with a slobbery smile. I'm just an optimist. I live I can accomplish anything. So I'll work harder on my school responsibilities. Promise. I tend to believe in happy endings and good people. I also look up to people who are very optimistic, like my 4th grade teacher. He is very optimistic because he always sees things in a positive light and encourages everyone to respect and accept others even if they seem different. All right, you glass half empty people, are you on my side yet? Have you given life enough thought and realized the errors in your beverage sipping ways? Actually, now that I think about it, I choose to be an optimistic realist. I always hope for the best, but I do everything I can to increase my chances of success too. I study for my test, I hope to do well, I do homework even when I don't want to. I wash my hands to avoid getting sick, and I wear a seatbelt in the car to be safe. Life feels great, because that's just how I see it. And everyone deserves a happy ending full of joy. So if you're not happy, then it's not the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Our next speaker is Penn.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? On January 12, 1942, history was made by just a little gift. This gift might have not meant anything to a regular person, but Anne Frank is no ordinary person. On this exact day, Otto Frank gave little Annie Keith a daddy. Anne Frank had a large idea for this little book. That is what I call optimism. I think optimism is having a vision for the future that would be positive. But is it positive? Can people really change the future just with their thoughts? Here's where the question comes in. What is a reality? How do you describe reality if you don't know how reality is going to turn out? Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? When trying to answer this question, I discovered my hero, Anne Frank. She was a real optimist and went through one of the most tragic times in history and still managed to say, in spite of everything, I still believe people have a good heart. In the end, Anne Frank, day by day, teaches me to be a better person just by thinking of her. Finally, after doing a little bit more research, I came to the realization that although maybe she couldn't physically change the world, I think she had more than a vision in her writing. Now, to the question. Can you change reality with optimism? You can, because I am a true believer that if you set your mind to do something, you can do it. Your outlook on life can really change your perspective. A great hero for me would be my great aunt, Karen Davis. I decided to ask more about this amazing lady to my dad. He said that she was one of the most kind, giving, and compassionate person he had ever met, and he was so glad she could be a part of his life. When my dad was my age, they didn't have a lot of money, but my great aunt Karen always came through for them. What really stands out for me is that she taught boys and girls with autism. She went all around the world not only teaching these amazing children, but she also taught the parents. She would invite my dad and her older sister Stephanie on several of these trips. Even though her job was probably stressful at times, she always kept her happiness and hopefulness for the future by her. She never married, but loved children in my family. My dad said that she took the family water skiing, hiking, and she cooked and organized all the family meals. Through all her hard work, she was rewarded with a scholarship in her name. The Davis Scholarship Endowment and the Disability Research Center at UGA. Sadly, my heroic, kind, and intelligent aunt died from breast cancer in 1999 before I was born. However, her story shall be passed down for many generations. What comes to mind when I say the African water crisis? To me, this is one of the world's leading problems and somehow needs to be solved. The water crisis affects more than 1.1 billion people globally. 1.1 billion people, innocent people, have to suffer. 1.1 billion people can't have something to drink in the morning. 1.1 billion people need our help, and it seems to me that we privileged Americans don't do enough about it. We use 80 to 100 gallons of water per day. Now imagine a mother in need with her newborn son. Those 80 to 100 gallons of water could save this poor boy's life. And we have a nerve to not help the cause. Approximately 1,000 children under 5 die from this crisis every day. So how can we watch this happen? I know I can't. So let's do something about it. Here are the facts. There are 10.4 million people in Georgia. If everyone in Georgia only donated about $15 to this charity for this cause, we could make about $157 million. $157 million for this cause. $157 million to that mother and her newborn son. All in all, everyone can change the future, but only the ones who have happiness, hope, and optimism will succeed. Every year, I struggle with this topic, lost in where I should start and where I should end. But this year, I really realized a lot about myself. And with optimism, I can even handle taking on reality.
Thank you, Pen. Our next speaker is Catherine Harper, KP.
Good morning.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? When facing this question, I thought back on the last year's oratorical contest. I remember the thoughts I would have when creating my speech. To be honest, optimism can be really hard for people to find and keep. When 2019 rolled around and the question was finally announced, it hit me. It depends. Now, let's be real. Most people either don't listen or in some cases turn down the hearing aids when it comes to it depends. But for what I have to share for you today can have a pretty good impact on your life, so listen up. Optimism can have an amazing effect on someone's life, which most of us can agree on. But for my next point, let's just say not so much. I believe that with the society we live in today, optimism can't always be found. For example, when you turn on the news, no matter what, more than half of the time, there's something tragic and unbelievable that just occurred. And in those cases, optimism is never around. So far away, astronauts haven't even discovered it. Yet, just yet. And that's a huge example of pure reality. When taking an optimistic viewpoint, you have an entirely different perspective on life. For example, let's take Will Smith. He's not only a wonderful actor and celebrity, but a person who takes advantage of optimism, but in a good way. He once said, don't ever let someone tell you that you can't do something. Not even me. You got a dream, you gotta protect it. When people can't do something themselves, they're gonna tell you you can't do it. You want something, go get it. Period. That was just one of the very wonderful quotes from Will Smith. And he chose to take advantage of optimism and live with optimism while still in reality. This is exactly why I think it depends. I think this because I truly know that optimism isn't something that you're just born with. It's something that you choose and have a passion about. And in this case, you're choosing if you want to live in a world where hate is the only option, or if you want to live the rest of your life up to the fullest with optimism while in reality.
Thank you, Katie. For our friends and family who just came in, it's really hard, but please hold your applause after each speech. Our next speaker is Kara.
Testing. Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? I've grappled a lot with this question. Although most of us always try our best to always be optimistic, sometimes we all have to face the hard truth of reality. Think of Cesar Chavez. Cesar Chavez led grape workers in Southern California on strike. But at first, many different people told him they didn't want to strike, because in the past, when people led strikes, they didn't work. This made me think about how the people who led those strikes were probably optimistic at first, but in the end, they had to face the brutal truth that their strike failed. Although there are big moments in history such as this one, there are small times in all of our lives when we have to face reality. One thing that I had to face is that I'm not the best at math. It took me a long time to accept this fact. Most of my family is very good at math and want me to do just as good as they did in the subject. But I had to face the reality that math is my weakest subject. Of course, this made me optimistic to get my scores up. However, facing this fact is one of the hardest things I've ever done. Although there are small moments in our lives such as this one, there are some bigger things happening right now in our country. America has always been a country full of immigrants, but in the past year, we've stopped the number of immigrants coming into our country abruptly. My family is full of immigrants. My grandparents came here from India, and my uncle from Iran.
However, if I was an immigrant coming into America now, I'd be separated from my family probably forever. As optimistic as I might be that my family would find a better life in America, I'd have to face the horrid truth of reality. America isn't the same. We no longer let immigrants into our country. Sometimes I have to watch other people face the hard truth of reality. Two of my friends entered a contest. One of them won the contest. I had to watch my friend that didn't win face the reality that her friend's entry was better than her own. But something tells me next year she'll ask for advice from my friend who won. Vietnam is one of the few wars that America has lost. I have usually been taught that America is a great country and that people come in here to make a better life for themselves. But when I think about Vietnam, I don't see a great country. I see a group of people that burned down Vietnamese people's houses and shot innocent people. As optimistic as I might be about America, I'd have to face the reality that we shot innocent people. One of my favorite quotes is from the movie Dazed and Confused. On the 4th of July, do not forget what you were celebrating, that a bunch of rich, white, slave-owning men didn't want to pay their taxes. Although this stretches the truth a little bit, it makes sense. Remembering what happened, not what we want to think happened. Facing reality can be hard, especially when we don't want to face the reality. But if it's something from winning a contest to American immigrants in the Vietnam War, the fine line is drawn between optimism and reality.
Thank you, Kara. Our next speaker is Kate.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Yes, I think there's a fine line between optimism and reality. I like to think of the fine line as a finish line, indicating success. I believe that with optimism and a little bit of knowledge or experience, you can make reality what you really desire. Here, imagine you're going to run a marathon. You start running and are being optimistic. You've been running for around 12 months. You're a little tired now, and you have a decision to make. You can either stay bright and hopeful that you can make your hopes and dreams be reality, or you can complain that you're tired, you'll never win, and the marathon is too long. The first one will help you cross the finish line, but the other one will get you nowhere. I don't know if you remember the bombing of the Boston Marathon a few years ago. My parents were actually there that day. It was my dad's first time running the Boston Marathon. He had already finished the race when the bombs exploded, but my parents were still only a few blocks away. I remember sitting in front of the TV, watching the news, scared that my parents were hurt. All those people I saw on TV and more were probably scared of the dreadful reality that comes with hate, too. And some of those people sadly got injured. Adrian Haslett is one of those who was injured. Adrian Haslett is a professional ballroom dancer. She even had an appearance on Dancing with the Stars. On top of that, she is a runner. Adrian ran the Boston Marathon in 2013, the year of the bombs. At the finish line, 2 bombs went off, and she lost her left leg. But she had a wonderful doctor who lost both his legs to design a prosthetic leg for dancing. Even with that, it was still really hard for her to get back going, running, and dancing again. She did it though. In 2016, Adrian Haslett finished the Boston Marathon for the first time since she had lost her leg. When she lost her leg, she was probably worried about many things. One being that she might not be able to dance ever again. She worked her way up to dancing and running again though. After that, I would imagine that she would be thinking that she was back, and with her prosthetic leg, she was okay. She could do most everything that she did before. But reality is always throwing hard things at you, and a lot of Adrian too, because just a few months ago, she was hit by a car while crossing the street just a few blocks from her house. She won't be able to run the Boston Marathon this year because her arm was hurt so badly in the injury. She's staying optimistic and is not letting that stop her. She said, "I am more than my broken pieces.
I had to completely redefine myself after losing my leg, and I know I can do it again after being hit by a car. Give yourself the time, and you can do anything. I was scared when I saw what happened at the Boston Marathon. That's nothing compared to what I think Adrian felt. There's a lot we can learn from what she went through. If she's able to come back from such a huge injury, then I think we can all try to overcome whatever is holding us back. Sure, there's a fine line between optimism and reality, a finish line, made to be crossed. It will take hard work and perseverance, but with optimism as our secret weapon, we can all cross that finish line and turn our dreams into our reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Our next speaker is Oriana.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? We say that there's a thin line between love and hate. These are opposites. However, reality and optimism are not exactly opposites. The opposite of realism is idealism. A good example of this can be seen in the character of Don Quixote. This fellow imagines an ideal world in which he is able to solve old problems and right old wrongs through his imagined strength. His sidekick, Sancho Panza, sees things as they truly are, because he has never read books about fantasy and knights. Sancho is a realist, while Don Quixote is an idealist. An optimist does not ignore the real problems of our world or imagine them to be other than they are. An optimist recognizes the problems as such, but has a positive attitude towards working with others to find solutions to these problems. An example of a problem we can solve is animal abuse, in particular the existence of puppy mills. There are too many dogs that do not have a home and will be put to sleep in animal shelters. Often these dogs have been used for fighting and have suffered severe injuries. It makes no sense to continue breeding purebred dogs when there are so many that need a home. Overbreeding leads to many physical and mental health problems for these animals. We need to educate the public about the harm caused by puppy mills and pet stores. We can volunteer and donate money to our local animal shelters. I am optimistic that these improvements can become reality.
Thank you, Oriana. Our next speaker is Molly.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Well, it depends. It depends on how you see optimism and reality. The dictionary defines reality as the true situation that exists, the real situation. The dictionary defines optimism as a feeling or belief that good things will happen in the future, a feeling or belief that what you hope for will happen. These definitions reflect some common ways of thinking. Some people think an optimist is someone who sits around, always thinking happy thoughts and expecting good things to happen no matter what. And those same people may tend to believe that reality is only what presently exists and that you can't influence it. These viewpoints are reflected in an old saying, retold by William Arthur Ward. It says, if the wind is blowing very hard in the ocean, the pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects it to stop, and the realist turns the sails. I don't think that's a fair way to characterize an optimist. I believe an optimist can't just sit around waiting for the wind to blow. A proactive optimist has an obligation to make things happen. And when they do, they can cause real change. They can make reality. And so maybe there's no line between optimism and the real world, because optimism is what shapes reality. There are many people from history who I could mention, but I'd like to focus on a strong female role model, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is an optimist who also took action. Justice Ginsburg is currently on the Supreme Court, but I'd like to talk about her earlier career as a lawyer fighting for equal rights between men and women. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was born on March 15, 1933, in Brooklyn, New York. She became a lawyer during a time when thousands of federal and state laws discriminated against women. For example, women could not work overtime, couldn't have a credit card in their own name, women couldn't serve on a jury. If Ginsburg was a regular optimist, she would have sat back and waited for change to happen. But she was an optimist who took action. And in doing so, she changed reality for generations of women to come. Ginsburg was one of only 8 other women in her class of 500 at Harvard Law School. To their surprise, these women were asked by the dean of the law school why they felt entitled to occupy seats that would otherwise be filled by men. Imagine that. Though she graduated with top honors, she was unable to find a job at a New York City law firm as her husband did. That was her reality. She was told over and over that the law has no place for a woman. She didn't just sit back and accept her reality. She fought for what she believed in. Her career took her to the fight for civil rights in America. She fought for the right for men and women to be treated equally under the law. Ginsburg said that she envisioned that together men and women would, quote, create new traditions by their actions if artificial barriers were removed and avenues of opportunity held open to them, end quote. She was a lawyer for men and women who were treated differently under our laws because of their gender. She didn't win every case, but through a series of hard-fought challenges, she successfully convinced the Supreme Court to strike down state and federal laws that treated men and women differently. Because of Ginsburg's work, the court recognized for the first time that the U.S. Constitution guarantees equal protection of the laws to both men and women. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's life story shows clearly that she was an optimist who believed she could change the world. She didn't just sit back and wait for a world where men and women have equal rights. She was optimistic that she could change the world, and she did. Returning to the original question, is there a fine line between optimism and reality? For some optimists, the passive kind, I would say there's a wide gap, not just a fine line. And for the proactive optimists that go out and change the world, there's perhaps no line at all, because those optimists make their own reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Boys and girls, you have 3 more speakers, so you're doing great hanging in there. Thank you. Our next speaker is Alexandra.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Although you may think there's a line separating optimism and reality all the time, but what you think may not be true. We need optimism, me and you. For if you separate them with a line, you make no hope inside your life. You take some paper, write a line. You have an optimistic side. With reality on the other column, you list some optimistic things, like happiness, joy, and hope for spring. You list some realistic things like work, play, and season change. And almost everything you see is real to you. It's what you know. But you must stand up and erase that line, and know optimism is with you all the time. I think optimism is hope for the future or present, or even hope to fix things that were in your past. Regardless of time, past, present, or future, optimism is always having a positive outlook no matter what. I think reality is what's happening all around us right now. You're probably thinking people could be traveling, maybe sunny or pouring rain, but it's possible to happen. It's real. I would say if there is a fine line separating optimism and reality, we should erase it. We don't need that line. We need optimism in our world, in our reality. Saying there's a fine line is almost like saying we should not have a positive outlook in life. Separating the two is like saying we should quit having hope. People who are bringing optimism into their life are erasing that fine line. And without optimism and reality, the world would not be how we know. So don't lose your optimism. Keep it in your life. Even if people make you feel down, don't let them take your optimism. Without optimism, some people wouldn't stand up for what's right, like MLK. MLK stood up for rights and showed that line was possible to erase. Lots of people need optimism to keep fighting for what they believe. Martin Luther King Jr. was a civil rights leader who was working for equal rights for all. He had a dream, a powerful dream, a dream that inspired many on the March in Washington and still to this day. Even though African Americans were treated unfairly, he believed the United States could change. In his I Have a Dream speech, he said, I have a dream that my four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. African Americans were separate, but his optimism, hope for change, and peaceful actions, he was able to make a change in our reality because of him having optimism. He said in his life's blueprint speech at Barnet High School, number one in your life's blueprint should be a deep belief in your own dignity, your own worth, and your own somebodyness. Don't allow anybody to make you feel that you're a nobody. Even if those students were treated unfairly, they should always believe in themselves. He and the protesters had to keep protesting to get their goal of no segregation. Even if people put them down, they still had MLK's first thing in your life's blueprint. MLK had optimism that there would be no more segregation. He turned that hope into reality by speaking up. But it's easier to continue something if you have hope. And if you have hope, you must have optimism. I know that some people may not see the line as a separator like me, but as a connector. But to me, lines are for separating. Say you have a sibling and you share a room. All of a sudden, your sibling draws a line of chalk dividing your room in half. I see that line as the fine line between optimism and reality. The optimism is you and your sibling may be more peaceful, but the reality is you're still in the same room and you will have to put up with each other. That room you share is like the USA. And that line is like the separation between people. Like, for example, the separation between African Americans and white people. MLK helped get rid of that line separating people, but you have to cross that other line and bring optimism into your reality. When optimism is in your life, it can make your reality more enjoyable. MLK gave much optimism and had optimism at the same time. So, if you can, bring optimism into your life, like so many others have done. Erase that fine line.
Thank you, Alexander. Our next speaker is Samuel.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Is there a lady doctor? My wife is in labor. Sophia replied, I'm no doctor, but my father is. He'll help your wife. The young man's face fell in sadness. He said, no, I need a lady doctor, and laughed. Is there a lady doctor? Came another man running. Sophia gave the same reply, and he left too. The same night, another similar incident happened. Sophia thought to herself, things will be all right. Sophia woke up the next morning only to witness the funeral procession of these three women. Reality struck her hard and scared her. Yes, there is a fine line between optimism and reality. Ida Sophia Scudder, child of an American missionary serving in India, had a great ambition of going to America to live the life of her dreams. This fateful incident in a small village, which was famously called the Three Knocks in the Night, changed her life forever. She was optimistic and hoped that everything will be all right. She believed that there was a hope for these people. But how? She became a realist. Sophia left behind her American dreams in the Indian soil, came to America where she got her degree in medicine and became a surgeon. Returning to India, she established a nursing school, which grew to become the first graduate school of nursing in India. The spark of hope made this huge mission a reality. She was optimistic, but the road to being successful was hard and required sacrifices. Optimism is a state of accepting reality and feeling at peace with the situation. Hope, determination, and a firm will to make the situation better becomes a reality. It all happens with faith in God, loving others, being selfless, and above all, forgiving. Years ago, I was a finalist in a competition. One of my fellow contestants turned to me and said, "I hope you lose to me." It hurt me bad and shook my confidence. But my parents have always taught me to love thy neighbor as thyself. So you know what I did? I forgave his rude attitude and turned to him and said, "I wish you good luck." The emotional lift I experienced after I wished him luck was unexplainable. It made me feel more positive, gave me a confidence boost, and above all, the feeling of the good me. A few moments ago, what seemed practically impossible became a reality because I chose to forgive, and today we are best buddies. Yes, it is hard to deal with the current chaos with the hope that everything is going to be all right unless you make the choice to stay realistic and deal with it. It is always the choice we make that matters the most and helps us cross that fine line. Yes, the choice to stay strong amidst weakness, the choice to stay calm amidst turmoil, the choice to stay focused than to crumble, the choice to work hard than to blame, the choice to love than to hate, and above all, the choice to forgive than to have vengeance. Eva Moses Scott, survivor of the Holocaust of the 40s and a forgiveness advocate, wrote a letter to Dr. Hans Munch, who was a physician at the concentration camp, titled, "I Forgive." Isn't this optimism which makes it a reality? Put on the breastplate of faith and love and the helmet of hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. And our next speaker is Josie.
Is there a fine line between optimism and reality? Hearing this question, my mind goes back to thoughts thinking of problems happening all around us, right here and now. Although we all try and have a good look, although we all try and look on the bright side of life, at times we just need to realize that things are going on is not okay. Reality, of course, doesn't always have to be a bad thing. And when something good is happening, it's great to show passion, excitement, and overall happiness for what you're experiencing. In my eyes, the fine line crossing between optimism and reality represents the knowing that even the most optimistic people don't always have things go their way. Some people think the world revolves around themselves, but the world's not going to change its ways just for you. I've wished many times that I could just go back in time and redo something that I've regretted. But life has its ups and downs, and you just have to realize that what happens is what happens, and we can't change that. I've been doing dance for quite a while now, and sometimes reality gets the best of me.
But sometimes I even think about taking a break from dance, but I have to do all I can to think on the bright side and tell myself that I can do it. Occasionally, you just have to tell yourself that everything's going to be okay, even when you know things aren't. Maybe you'll be surprised what happens in the future. Even though I try and stay optimistic in every situation, from time to time, reality gets the best of me, and I just have to acknowledge that it's okay to take a break from always having a huge smile on my face. Your feelings are going to end up getting hurt sooner or later, but all you can do until then is try your hardest to stay optimistic. However, there were some periods in time where people just couldn't keep optimistic for any longer. Throughout history, we've had life-changing experiences that would change our lives forever. And some of these were not a great thing to remember at all. For instance, the first dropping of the Dresden atomic bomb. In 1945, the first atomic bomb was dropped on the Japanese town of Hiroshima, immediately wiping out everything in its path. This sickening time struck people's hearts where it hurt. Everyone believed that there was no way to regain happiness. Several years have passed since then, and people still have memories from that devastating period in time. Times like that hit us hard, and in situations like that, I'm sure if we could have changed what had happened, we would have done it in the blink of an eye. All we need to do is realize there are two ways we can look at things. What I mean is, in this situation, I'm sure that even optimists were grief-stricken and devastated. But in my eyes, most of them would try all they could to look on the bright side of life. But realists, on the other hand, may look at the situation as something that would never get better. Everyone's going to have different thoughts and feelings depending on the situation. In many cases, our thoughts change around. Everyone is different, and everyone sees the world differently from each other. But in hard situations, we just have to be as optimistic as we can. And maybe if we try hard enough, we can bring more optimism to our community. About a year ago, I got news that my best friend was moving away. Of course, I didn't know what to say because it was a huge shock to me at the moment. We had been close since first grade, and I tried all I could to keep happy. But at the time, it was kind of hard. If you ever believe that reality will never get better, trust me, it will. A year has passed since she had moved away, and I now realize everything that I thought would never get better did. Me and her always keep in touch, and I often tell myself there was no reason in me ever being sad. My point is, whenever reality gets you down, you just have to realize that even in the hardest times, things are going to end up getting better. Winston Churchill once mentioned, "I'm an optimist. It does not take too much use in being anything else." I believe that if we can all get to thinking the way that he did, maybe you and the people around you can realize there are ways to block out the bad things in life. No matter how bad things get for you, try to do all you can to be an optimist in the situation. Optimists try and see the best of what is happening. So if we can all push ourselves to do that, maybe reality won't be as hard on us. I believe that everyone goes through tough moments in life. But if we just give ourselves some time, maybe you, me, and everyone else in our community can learn to block out the reality of things when life is coming at us hard.
Thank you, Josie. Now, fifth graders, if I could please get all of you without your speeches in your hand to stand up front so we can give you a proper round of applause and get some photos. We appreciate it, fifth grade. Come on, Larry, let's get on in here. Please join me in congratulating our awesome Evan, please lower the mic so that it doesn't come. There you go. And look this way, guys. Yep. And Josie. All right, here we go. And of course, thank goodness, Josie's dad is here.
Hey, really quick here. Hey, one, two. Nice, thanks.
Please, one more round of applause for our amazing. And if our fifth graders can have a seat, we would like to give out some certificates of achievement right now, and we're gonna ask our assistant principal and our principal to do us those honors up front. So when you hear your name, if you'll come get your certificate.
I'm so happy I just met and social studies.
Yeah, boys and girls, so you're gonna get on his
When you hear your name, please come up, get your certificate, and shake my hand. We have Camilla. Sophia Clifton. Donovan Howard. Bo Rentz. Claire Murphy. Mary Wicker. James Kelly. Charlotte York. Devin Lawrence. Jack Williams. Sam Williams. Kai Hernandez Gamble. Oliver Sigmund. Liam Ross. Fifth graders, Kate Ness. Kara Flatt. Alexandra Ozuna. Evan Cornish. Molly Orbach. Copeland Howard. Oriana Nixon. Ken Davis. Josie Thrasher. Catherine Parker Dement. Samuel Rashid. Larius Bedford Jr. Lucia Bivey. Did we get everybody? All right, well done, buddies. I'm impressed.
So, boys, girls, I think we got you finished in time for lunch, fifth graders, and recess, fourth graders. Please put your certificates in your Monday folders to go home, nice and crisp. And we will be making an announcement later today, but congratulations to all of you. And we will make sure that the link for watching the speeches is well advertised to friends and families. Congratulations, and you'll put those in your folders.
It's not
Yes, thank you guys.
Smile.